Hi everyone, and welcome to the next instalment of our guest speaker series, our Wellness Women speaker series. I'm really excited because today's guest is Tanya Valentin. Now, I haven't known Tanya very long and we've worked a little bit together, but I'm really excited to get Tanya to tell you all about what she does, because it's, again, a really, really important area of health and wellbeing that I think is really starting to come to the fore now. And so I'm very excited to have this opportunity to talk to you, Tanya. Do you want to tell everybody about what you do?
So I am a midlife mentor for women, and I help women who feel like they've really been trapped in that the roles, the expectations, the responsibilities that other people have of them. And I think, sometimes we reach that part of our lives where our life really doesn't feel like ours anymore. And so I help women who have reached that point of, I've had enough, and I want to be enough to move into that feeling of confidence and being empowered and trusting themselves. So that reconnection with who they truly are, I help them to facilitate that.
That's awesome. And why are you so passionate about that particular group of women? What's made you kind of feel like you need to work in that area?
Well, because that was me about 10 years ago. I reached this point in my life where I just looked in the mirror and thought, I just don't recognize you anymore. I had all these dreams and things that I had wanted to achieve when I was younger. And I had let them all just, be on hold. They were, all slowly dying. And I realized that, there was something wrong with my life, even though it looked great and looked fine from the outside. I had this real deep sense that I just wasn't living the life that I was meant to be living. I wasn't being the person that I was meant to be being. And it made me feel really miserable. It made me feel really stuck. I got into, because of this sort of inner conflict, like it was like these two people in me. I know it kind of sounds weird, but this person that everybody else expected me to be, and this person that I knew that I was, who had her own needs, her own dreams, her own desires, and I wasn't living from that space. I was in a job that was great. It was really stable. I was helping people, but it wasn't lighting me on fire.
Right.
And but it paid too much money for me to leave, and so I was kind of sort of really stuck. And it kind of just infiltrated all the other areas of my life, like my marriage, how I mothered my children, and I got really, really depressed. And then I found myself looking for all these answers outside of myself to fix the problem. Like, it was all these external answers. So I quit my job. I changed jobs often because I thought, oh, what I need is just a new challenge. What I need is just to feel more passionate about what I'm doing. And that didn't work. And so then I left the teaching field, which is where I was. And I thought, I'm going to open my own business. So I opened my own business. And then after 2 years, it just was like a massive failure. And I nearly went bankrupt. And and so that just made my marriage even worse. It made me a distant parent. And then the feeling that I felt inside, it hadn't gone away. It had just intensified. And I ended up being on really strong antidepressants. I was, I put on heaps of weight. My well-being wasn't great. And it was all from this internal struggle that I felt of, something's not right. I need to fix it. But I was looking for answers in all the wrong places.
Outside of yourself.
outside of myself. And then it wasn't until like a few years after that where I was sitting in my very first personal development workshop. It was like a 3-day event that my boss had booked us all on.
Right.
And
you hadn't chosen to go on it yourself.
I hadn't chosen to go on it. I kind of went in there kicking and screaming. I was trying really hard to avoid going. And I remember just sitting there, and this woman walked in, and she was just like, the way she held herself. She had a moko on her chin. But she was a European lady.
Right.
And she had like really striking blue eyes and this really gruff, like manly voice. And man, her presence was just electrifying. And you could tell, like you could actually feel nervous being in her presence, because you could tell that she could see like right through all the, all the lies and the BS.
Yeah.
And during those 3 days, I sat there thinking, okay, I can just kind of like go with the flow here. And, sometimes how we do on training things, yeah, that's good information. Yeah, okay. And you just kind of like leave. Yeah. Or I can really just make the commitment to myself in this moment, because I could feel this was a really powerful opportunity.
Right.
And I could just lean into this discomfort. And I chose to lean in. Right. And within 6 months of being at that personal development course, I quit my job. I had a really, really hard conversation with my husband about our marriage. We sold our house. We moved towns. I started my own business. I wrote 2 books. And I started on this real journey of helping other women. Initially, I started working in the education sector, still just helping teachers to take better care of themselves.
Yeah.
But slowly, I realized that it wasn't really like what I was teaching was important, but that wasn't really who I wanted. I didn't want to be exclusively just for the education sector, because I felt like there was a much bigger problem that I wanted to be the solution of. And so that sort of led me down this path to, helping midlife women.
Right. That's amazing. So that personal development conference, that was the catalyst for change. You obviously were meant to be there, and you were ready to listen to what was going on.
Oh, absolutely. And it's quite funny because and I talk about this in my book, all the other people that were on the conference with me, they've continued to just do what they've done. And it's not like a reflection, a bad reflection on them. It was just like, to me, it was just this was just the thing that I needed. This was just like, I was ready. And this was the opportunity for me to create this massive change in my life.
Yeah. And most of that change, did that really come not from the external, but from working on yourself and trying to reconnect with who you really are?
Absolutely. When I was in there, I realized, we're so afraid of change. We're so afraid of challenging ourselves or challenging our behaviors and our stories, because it brings up so much shame in us, because we're like, oh, I've let all this happen, or my life hasn't turned out the way that I want to, or it's all my fault. Like sometimes you feel like you're going to come to this place, you're like, this is all my fault. And there's a lot of like shame and blame. But if you can move past that, you also just rediscover really amazing things about yourself. In those 3 days, I rediscovered my love for writing, which is something that I've always been really passionate about. But for 20 years, I'd stopped writing, and I don't know why I had done that, because it didn't cost anything. Right. But it was just this really pivotal part of myself that I had just kind of, suppressed. I also discovered my real deep connection with my spirituality, which I'd also just let fizzle away.
Yeah.
And so there were these two really important things that I actually rediscovered about myself during those 3 days, and those really grew. And the other thing that I really noticed was all the stories that I had made up about my life. Like, so when I left school and I wanted to be a writer, because that's what I wanted to do, I had these stories from my parents going, oh, that's not a real job. You're never going to make any money doing that. All those stories. And I had a daughter, my eldest daughter, who is also incredibly creative, a writer, an artist. And I was doing exactly the same thing to her.
Yeah.
And when I was able to change my thinking and embrace who I truly was, it was like giving her permission to do that for herself, which was such an amazing thing for both of us.
Yeah, I really resonate with that, and it's really interesting because I've had a similar experience where I wanted to write, but actually I like performing. I'm a show off, so I like standing up and talking and all the rest of it. And I used to do a lot of that when I was younger, and even as a teenager, I would stand up and give talks. And then that stops. I don't know why when you're late teens, and I was actually a really spiritual kid as well. And then I remember thinking, oh, your acting's not a proper job, and you can't really. I actually wanted to kind of direct and produce stuff rather than necessarily act, but it wasn't a proper job. So I joined the police instead because that was a proper job, and that's what everyone in my family had done. And then you kind of lose that. I think some of the times the stuff that you love as a kid, that's actually part of you, like the gifts you've got, and then for whatever reason we put it to the side, we stop doing it, we become grown up. And then I remember I kind of felt like I lost myself, but it was when I hit my 40s. So I don't know about if that was your age. It was my 40th birthday. I remember feeling quite depressed for 6 months because it was looking at what I've done. Have I actually done what I wanted to do? What am I going to do with the next 40, 50 years? And just really trying to remember who I was. I didn't lose my identity, but it was that feeling like something's not right. This is my opportunity. And it's probably taken me the last 10 years where I've started to kind of dig back into, well, what did I love doing? What can I do that where I can start bringing that back? But the spirituality I've really embraced that, whereas I hid that for a long time because I thought, oh, that's kind of a bit weird and people aren't going to accept that. Whereas now I think, I don't care. To some extent, I've still got work to do, but it's just still that it's really interesting that you kind of go through this phase, and in mid-age, it's almost like that chance to blossom. And my daughter wants to perform, and I heard myself and my husband said, "Oh, did you get a proper job?" And in fact, I heard my husband say that, and then something clicked to me, and I thought, nah. So I've said, you go for it, and we signed her up, and she's out there. And I said, doesn't matter if it works or not. You're doing something that you love, and you have to do that. But I kind of wonder if she's going to go through that. It just seems lots of women go through that same journey where we kind of hide something of ourselves. And then it takes this is midlife is our opportunity for whatever reason to reconnect and then actually be who we are. And when we don't do that, I think that kind of kills our soul, and that then will have health implications later on. So, I mean, were you kind of in your 40s when that happened?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was. So when all this kind of, well, I had kind of had like inklings of this probably when I was around 35.
Right.
I started to feel quite miserable and depressed, and that's when I kind of had my last daughter, because I thought, oh yeah, I know what I need to do. I need to have another child, because this is it's just because my two older ones are getting older and they're going to school. So it's this I'm feeling this kind of change in motherhood, and so I need to have another baby so that I don't feel that way. And so I had my daughter then, and then she didn't sleep for 2 years, so that just totally depleted me. But yeah, it was really that sort of like 40 where it was really became like it real kind of hit that nail on the head. And it's funny how you say it, I think that sort of 40 plus time is when we have this, we return to ourselves. And so many women that I've spoken to, like the things that they love to do, as you said, when they were younger, that's the stuff that we're supposed to do. That's our light. That's our
Why do we not know
contribution.
that when we're in our 20s though? Why do we have to wait 20 years to get that?
Well, I think it's because our mums probably, you know, they weren't encouraged to be their true selves and to follow their passions and their hearts. You think about it. They were told you get married, you have kids, and
Yes.
that's your life.
Yeah.
And so I firmly believe that when we work on ourselves, we create healing for our children, we create healing for all the generations to come after us. And that is such a massive, like, spiritual journey. And so I don't know, like, it'd be really interesting to see if we've kind of rewritten this story for ourselves and we've passed that on to our daughters, whether they will lose themselves in the same way. They might have other struggles, but they might not, you know, I'm hoping, like, you know, this is a work in progress, but that they would not lose themselves in that way. They will, because they have our backing, to say, no, you go out, you go and shine that light. I believe in you. That they'll have a different story.
I hope so. And if not, and then they'll do the same. I mean, I look at my daughter and she's very different from me in a lot of ways, in that she knows what she wants to do, and she's quite stubborn. I mean, I'm stubborn, but there's something about her that she seems to be a lot more connected to what makes her feel good. And even if it makes other people not feel good, if it makes her feel good, she wants to do it. And it's not in a selfish way, but just I look at her and I think she's almost a role model for me, how I should be. And it's fascinating. And then I think, oh, well, when you become a mum, God, your daughter is going to be, I mean, there's an element where she's like real feminist. And I kind of say, well, don't be too hard on the guys. But I'm looking forward to seeing what she's like as a mum and how she brings her kids up, because I can imagine her kids are going to grow up thinking they can do whatever the hell they want. And it doesn't matter what other people think. I could see, I hope she never loses that, because it fascinates me, and I see a lot of her, like that generation as well, just seem to, I don't know, they don't seem to want to people please as much as perhaps our generation did. I don't know. It's really interesting. I think things are shifting.
I definitely do. I definitely feel that sort of that shift in the energy of the planet. I also think our younger generation, they're a lot more accepting of differences. They're a lot more accepting of, you know, neurodiversity and genders. And
it's not even an issue, is it? Because
I
say something and they'll be like, what are you on about? Who cares? It's just not a thing. And I love that. It's like a good reminder.
Absolutely. You know, so it's been really, really fascinating being a mum to teenagers. Like, I know that it's harder out there for them than perhaps when we were, but I think in some ways it's a lot more freeing for them as well, because they
just need the tools more to cope with that transition. Because I think a lot of the anxiety and I see a lot more anxiety and depression, but I think that's all part of that transition. And as long as they've got the tools to kind of get through that and know that, you know, you're not happy all the time, because I think part of it was thinking they should be happy all the time, and when they're not happy, something's wrong with them. But I think that's kind of, there's the two sides to it, isn't there? There's the anxiety and the worry about the world and about what's going on, but then there's this openness to the fact that we're all that you know what really matters, and half the stuff we get upset about really doesn't matter. It's an interesting kind of dynamic that I see going on.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny that you say, you know, like, you know, just having those tools is really important. I also think, you know, just the way that we're we're discovering new things about brains and about anxiety, about depression now than perhaps we didn't have when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And a lot of the research out there, is really, really great. Like, a few years ago, we would have just gone, oh, well, you just need to take some antidepressants. And now we're really are digging into, well, what is the thing? What is the cause of why we feel depressed?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not always because of a brain chemicals not quite working, which is what they always used to think. Now it's not that necessarily.
Yeah. And I know for a lot of women who are in that sort of midlife space, a lot of the depression that they're feeling comes from that sort of inner conflict that we have. And taking antidepressants might just like take the edge off. But to me, that's kind of looking for the answer outside of yourself again.
Yeah.
And for me, that didn't work.
Yeah.
It was really working on myself, reconnecting with my spirituality, reconnecting with what brought me alive, that has just totally transformed my whole life, and transformed my relationships too. Like, so many women, like when they come to me as well, they're like, oh, I want to fix my husband, or I want to fix my marriage. If they change, then my life's going to be okay. And it's always like, no, you need to come back to yourself. The only person that you're going to change is yourself. And our external world is a mirror of our internal world.
Yeah, 100%. So work on that rather than outside, and then everything will eventually sort itself out. But it's a challenge, isn't it? Because I think working on yourself, it's confronting, it's frightening, you're going to be uncomfortable. So sometimes staying as you are, even though that's uncomfortable, you almost get to the point where it has to be that bad that you've just got to do it, even rather than stay as you are and be uncomfortable. The change, even though that's uncomfortable, that's actually not as bad as staying as you are. And you kind of have to get to that point and know that it's going to be a journey. It's not going to be easy, but what is at the end is what you have to kind of keep in mind the whole time.
Absolutely. And I think, sometimes when we start on the path, it actually becomes harder initially, because when you're changing, people around you might not be changing. And so they're going to put up a lot of resistance. When you start putting in boundaries, or have to start developing different interests, or connecting with yourself, needing a bit more time to yourself to just rediscover who you are, you show up so differently in the world that you are going to get resistance from your family, from your partner, from your friends, because you are different and you've educated them in a way of you for so many years. And so they're not going to like it. And you have to really have this real strong sense of confidence in yourself and your path. And that's why I really advocate for bringing women together in community during this part of our lives, because you need the backup of other women who perhaps are at the same level, or maybe just a little bit ahead of you, to go, hey, it's okay, this is normal,
in there, get
in there, it will get better, and to have that support, because sometimes you're just not going to get that support from the people who love you.
And then you're more likely to go back to the way it was before, because then that was easy. And it's even if I feel crap, at least life is kind of settled.
Yeah, absolutely. And but then you just create more of that war in yourself, because you're like, oh, I tried that, it didn't work, or I made this commitment to myself and look, I've failed myself yet again. I've broken another promise to myself. And so that just kind of puts you more down that sort of shame cycle. So you can do it on your own, but in my experience, having someone like a mentor or having a community behind you definitely helps you to, it speeds it up. It helps to ease that discomfort so that you're not stuck in that for years and years and years, because I literally was stuck in that for years.
Yeah. And I think when you go back, it's like, because I can see most journeys, it's not just a straight line, it's kind of like a spiral, because sometimes you go back to the way you were, and but the getting back up and going back to the new behavior and the new thoughts, I think that gets quicker. And when you're in a group, people can help bring you back up so that you don't stay in that default, but know that you probably are at some point going to drop back. But it's the you move forward kind of almost like a shunting to some extent. It's not a nice line.
No, it never is. And sometimes when you feel like you're repeating something, you're not actually repeating it. You're revisiting it on a different level. So it's kind of like a spiral downwards.
Yeah.
So you're deepening your understanding, and some behavior might show up again, and you think, why am I doing this? Why am I repeating this behavior? And then you're like, yes, because I still have healing to do here, but I'm also experiencing this at a deeper level.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. So if you at your age now met your young 20-year-old self, what would you say? What would be your tip that you kind of feel like that would, you might not have necessarily listened at 20, but what would you say this is important?
I suppose, like, I am a firm believer that, like, our life apprenticeship, what we have in our life is meant to come into our life, because there is some sort of, we are part of some sort of divine plan, and we develop the tools and the resources that we need along the way to help us to get where we need to get. But I think I would say to her to stay strong in herself, and to realize that she already has what she needs inside of her. She doesn't have to spend such a long time looking for answers outside of her. That would probably be my advice to her, but she probably wouldn't listen. She probably would.
Well, then that's the seed. And when she's in her 30s and 40s, she'll say, I remember that. And then maybe the journey will be quicker because of that seed.
Yeah, maybe.
So how can people find you if they wanted that? What services do you offer, so that if people think that they'd love to get to know you more, do you do one-on-ones? Is there a Facebook group they can come and join to get to know you? How can people find you?
So I don't have a Facebook group, but I do have a group mentoring program that's kicking off at the end of August, and I also have some free trainings that are coming up on the 22nd of August, and I do one-on-one, so they can reach me on my website, tanyavalentin.co, and so I do a one-on-one mentoring package, a 12-week one and a 6-week one. So you can book a free clarity session with me where we can just talk through what's going on for you and map out some next steps. So there's that, or you can join me on my group mentoring program as well. And the main place where I like to hang out is Instagram. So you can follow me on Instagram. I do lives and post things in my story quite often.
And is that Tanya.Valentin?
That's at Tanya Valentin NZ.
I'll make sure that link goes up. And tell me about the books as well. So if people wanted to read your books, where can they get the books from, and what are the books about?
So my first book that I ever wrote was for the early childhood sector. So it's a leadership book around holistic leadership and looking after yourself as a leader, so that you can be in the best possible emotional space to lead other people. So
is that for all teachers, or would, because I know in the group there's a mix of people that are teachers for like the whole range of ages, so would that work with any teacher?
It's mainly for it was originally intended for early childhood teachers,
Right.
but I think in terms of any teacher that is leading other teachers
Yeah.
or inspiring for leadership, it is
Yeah.
a great book. It basically we talk about how the early childhood curriculum for New Zealand is an amazing framework for teachers as well and for leadership. So it's based on that.
Okay.
And that you can reach me by emailing me or messaging me on Insta, because I sell those ones just personally. But I do have my book that I published last year onto Amazon. It's called When She Wakes, She Will Move Mountains. And
Title.
thank you. And it talks that book is mainly about the Queen's journey. So the journey that we all embark on as women as we awaken at midlife, and the different it deals a lot with the different archetypes, the different feminine archetypes that we inhabit or embody throughout our lives, and the journey of basically being that sort of selfless mother, or the unnamed maiden, as I like to call it, that sort of damsel in distress, sleeping beauty type energy that a lot of women kind of learn to believe that that's what they need to do, to moving into that awakening process, going into the cave of self-discovery, and then emerging out the other side as the queen of your own life. So that's the journey of the book. And I provide many shadow work tools, reflective tools throughout the book to help you to understand yourself at a deeper level and to embody the different archetypes. So one of the major archetypes that I feel all women, and this might resonate with you, Sarah, a lot of women feel calling to them at midlife, is that wild woman archetype. That true version of ourselves, the the woman that actually is wanting to come out into the world.
You're kind of going, stay there.
Yeah, because we have this sort of idea from our upbringing that wild means out of control.
We
And
have to be the good girls.
Yeah, we have to be the good girls. You can't be the wild ones.
Yeah.
And that archetype is the pivotal one that we need to embody and actually embrace into our lives at midlife, in order for us to transition into being the queen of our own life that represents our mastery, our actually deciding what our life should look like, who we'd like to show, how we'd like to show up in our lives, how we'd like to show up in our relationships, which is another energy that a lot of women feel frightened of, because we've grown up a lot of evil queen stories, and like, they're going to think I'm a bitch if I stand up for myself.
If I say no, and
if I put in boundaries, people aren't going to like me anymore. So, but I really do feel like in order to have the life that we want, we do need to activate that energy in us and stand up in our own power, claim our own crown, and just be willing to shine. So that's the journey of the book.
I need to get this book. I'll put the link in for people, but I because I'm on that journey, but I get it. It's that people pleaser, don't want to upset people because you want people to like you. So, but the wild woman's like, I'm coming out whether you want me or not. It's really interesting.
It is, and if we suppress her, she doesn't go away. She just gets louder, and she makes all kinds of mischief and disruption in your life. She causes you to feel miserable because she's like, you have suppressed me for too long. And I'm not willing to just like lie idle. She's almost like she's the truth speaker, and she's the voice of our soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
And every woman has her. We all do. We've just been programmed not to be frightened of her, and we've been programmed not to listen to her. And a lot of that witch wound kind of energy comes through their programming as well.
Yeah.
Of, don't stand out, don't be too much.
I remember even as a kid and as a teenager, the wildness was there, but I got told so many times to stop talking. You're very loud, be quiet, shush, no one wants to hear you or see you. That I think that then takes over. So then you suppress the wild part of you as a child, because you're constantly told to be quiet or not be so loud, not be so extrovert or whatever it is. And then we put that away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do talk about the process in the book, but part of my work with women is to actually help them to integrate those two parts. And to also bring out the wise woman, who is, I feel like she's she's kind of like the balancing force to our wild woman. Like if we let the wild woman just be free, she will cause a lot of damage, because she has that chaotic energy, and she has been suppressed for too long. So it's almost like that feral wildness that can come out.
Like a volcano erupting.
Yeah. And if we think about our cycle, the week before our bleed, that's the week of the wild woman, because she's just under the surface and she's ready to let rip.
Which fits in with that. If you're having those symptoms where you're irritable or you're angry, that's not something that needs to be suppressed. That's something that needs to be looked at, because there is something there in your life that's actually making you angry. And that's the wild woman saying, you need to sort this out. Otherwise it's going to get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, part of the work is bringing that allowing us to hear the wise woman as well in us, so that we can temper the wildness with our own inner wisdom, not our fear of what's going on out there or answers from anyone else, but our own answers from within. So I know it's a fascinating thing, and I know we don't have forever to talk about it, although I could.
But hopefully it's kind of, there's little light bulbs going off, or there's questions, or there's curiosity, and then hopefully this will then lead to some big changes. So
yeah, so in my program, The Queen's Way, we kind of do some really deep digging into these archetypes, how to embody them, and how you can reconnect with yourself, so that you're not that feral wild woman, that you're actually the true wild woman, the embodied healthy expression of the wild woman.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. I really loved this. This is like, it's getting me excited. So thank you so much for giving up your time. I'll make sure all of the links to Instagram and Amazon, and see the webinars on the 22nd of August, and the course starts on the 29th. So this might be just after that. So I'll put all of the links up prior anyway, so people, when they watch this, they've already hopefully seen the webinar. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Really enjoyed that. Thank you.